Good evening, everybody. It's nice to start promptly, and out of respect for those who have come on time, we will do so. My name is John Trout. I'm the pastor here at St. Joe's. And for those who are here for the very first time visiting St. Joe's, we wish you a very warm welcome. In Gaelic, it's Céad Míle Fáilte. So we warmly welcome you to St. Joe's, and are very glad that those who are going to be presenting to us, and to grant to all of those who are gathered here the courage to embrace what is happening, and to know, especially, most importantly, to everybody listening, let us know through our Lord Jesus Christ that we are never alone. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over to Bridget Dutton, our youth minister.
Thank you, Father. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. It's great to see such a large crowd here. I think it speaks to the topic that we're addressing tonight and how important this topic is. So thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. Before we get started, we just want to go over some housekeeping logistics with you. First of all, if anyone needs to use the restroom, in the back of the room where the open doors are, you go down the hallway there, there's like a ramp down, and the bathrooms are at the end of the hall there. So that's where the bathrooms are. If you need water while you're here, we have some water and coffee set up to the side, so please help yourself to that as well. We also have the resource table. I know many of you stopped at that when you came in, but if you weren't able to grab anything off of it, please help yourself to it. And if we run out of handouts, let us know, and we can get more copies of those made. Also, on your tables, you'll notice that there's small baskets and that there's index cards and small pencils in there. Those are so that if you have any specific questions that you would like to ask us, please feel free to write them on those index cards. We would really like for this to be a conversation that addresses the questions or the topic, let you guys drive that a little bit. We have some questions that we already have prepared, but again, if you have specific questions that you would like addressed, if you would like it addressed by a specific presenter up here, please include those. I'd like to just point out a couple people in the room so that if you have any questions or have questions that you'd like submitted, they can help you with that. Mary Causey is over here. She's got the pink sweater on. And Anna Roser is in the back. Both of them would be able to help you in any way with anything. Okay, so Father, Okay, so what I'm going to do really quickly is introduce our speakers to you, and then they will have the opportunity to speak a little bit for themselves. First, we have Father Montero. He's currently completing his master's in pastoral counseling at Loyola University. We have Ana Santos Gitzinger. She is a certified yoga and meditation teacher. We have Karen Peterson. She is a licensed clinical social worker. And we have Michael Fitzgibbons. He's a licensed clinical professional counselor. So I'm going to turn it over to them in a second, but first I just wanted to give a little bit of why we're doing this tonight. So I am the Director of Youth Ministry here at St. Joe's, and I'm also the mom of 3 teens and young adults. So my kids range in age from 16 up to 20. And between the youth ministry work that I've done here at St. Joe's and what I see at my own house, it's very obvious that we are in the midst of a mental health crisis. I see so much social pressure. There's no downtime because of social media. There's a constant fear of failure, unrealistic expectations, anxiety through the roof. Kids feel so connected yet so isolated. Depression. As a parent, as a grandparent, as a caregiver, as an educator, we begin wondering, what do I do? Am I enough? I'm struggling myself. If I'm struggling myself, how do I help my kids? So it's just this constant fear. It's this constant nagging that maybe, what do we do? And so from that is where this evening came from. It was kind of that thing of saying, well, I don't have the answers, but sitting in isolation by myself in constant fear isn't getting me anywhere. How do we open up the dialogue? How do we help people realize that it's not a stigma? We're all suffering. We all know it's out there. And how do we address it? There were a few statistics that I read that really kind of got me thinking. The U.S. Surgeon General issued an advisory in December of 2021, and it was on protecting youth mental health. So before the pandemic, mental health challenges were the leading cause of disability and poor life outcomes in young people, with up to 1 in 5 children aged 3 to 17 in the U.S. having a mental, emotional, developmental, or behavioral disorder. From 2009 to 2019, the share of high school students who reported persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness increased by 40% to more than 1 in 3 students. And the pandemic has only added to that. But then we look at our community and we say, but we live in Libertyville. It's great here. Everything is, we live in a bubble, it's great. And I hear it all the time, but then you see these kids and you realize that they're suffering. And when you look at the adults and you realize that there's some real pain. But I wanted to point out this survey. It's called the Illinois Youth Survey. These are the results from 2016 to 2022, and this is specific to Libertyville High School. There were 2 numbers in there that really stuck out. In 2016, we had about 25 to 28% of all high school students saying that they had symptoms of depression. In 2022, we now have 35 to 40% of all high schoolers showing symptoms of depression. 15 to 20% of all high schoolers seriously considered attempting suicide. That's at Libertyville High School. What do we do with this information? It's overwhelming. How do we grapple with that as parents, as grandparents, as caregivers? We can't fix it. So how do we get the discussion going? And so that's why we're here tonight, to hear from these panelists, to start that conversation, and to try to find some hope and support during this difficult time. So with that, I just want to pass it over. We're going to start with you, Father. If you just want to do a brief introduction of yourself, and then from there, Anna, and then we'll go around, and then we'll start the questions.
So I'm Ternan Montero. I'm a Jesuit priest of the Bombay province in India. And the works that I've been involved in have been, first of all, I've been a professor at the seminary. I was teaching in the philosophy department. The major area of my work is counseling. And for me, I've got a chance to counsel individuals and couples, and I do enjoy counseling couples. The subjects that I've been teaching are ethics and morality, perspectives of human nature, and the psychology of religion. I have given many talks and seminars on topics such as emotion, self-esteem, and even hurt and violence. And I've been involved with the Engaged Encounter, which is an organization that helps prepare couples for marriage. But the thing that I've enjoyed the most is my own personal processing journey, which began in 2009, where I decided to just work on myself to understand how I operate and to really heal my own wounds from within. And I think that has manifested itself in the way I've been, living in ministry and performing the different jobs given to me. And from this came another very important ministry for me, a ministry that was very fulfilling, and that was directing and guiding inner healing retreats. And I think that's what has given me the opportunity to look at life from the lens of a psycho-spiritual perspective. And that's something that I would like to share with you right now. Whenever we talk of mental illness, we often connect it to stress, anxiety, depression. But the truth is, they are just symptoms of something else that is going on within, something much deeper. And so when we talk about preserving our mental well being, we have to find ways to connect with the root cause of our stress and anxiety. And the word I just used is what normally can cause us harm, but can also help us heal. And that word is connection. In my experience, what I've realized is that people's inability to connect with someone or something leads to stress and anxiety. And therefore, I will focus on the power and importance of prayer, spirituality, and resilience, and how that can help us in our mental well being. Something that has always captivated my attention and I found quite shocking is that they say on an average day we have thousands of thoughts going through our mind. And these thoughts that happen in every day, 80% are negative, and about just 20% may be positive. And further, 80% are of the past, 15% of the future, and just 5% of the present. So if you do the math with the 5% in the present and negative, the amount of negativity happening in our lives every day can be quite traumatic. And therefore, our minds therefore become a buzzing center of negativity, anxiety, and stress. And the more we are able to connect with these thoughts and emotions, the more we are able to experience a certain peace of mind and positivity in our lives. Because then it becomes much easier to heal what is really happening in our lives. Now, how does prayer help us move towards mental well being? When we pray with scripture, or we just pray in silent meditation, or even in and with nature, what we're really doing is we're finding ways to connect with things in our life. We're able to connect with somebody, we're able to connect with a power much higher than us. And through that connection, healing normally would happen in our lives. And one thing I've also realized with prayer is it's not just an ability to connect, but it also gives us a chance to converse. We're able to let out what is going on within us. And it is a human need and desire to release painful emotions and to stop the ruminating thoughts in our minds. And as I mentioned, they're just symptoms of something deeper. So conversing with God helps people release the pain they are carrying, which leads to a burden lifted. A gift and grace that I've received very often in the retreats that I've given is the transformation of people from either grief or anger to serenity and peace at the end of the retreat, because they had a chance to let out what was going on really within them. To take the point further, from a faith perspective, I do believe that mental well being is very much connected to forgiveness. There is a strong correlation between our thoughts and emotions. We carry hurts, grudges, and negativity towards people, and also accumulated frustrations and anxiety in relationships or places of work. The turmoil of our inner world affects our mental state of being, and we get lost in a vortex of pain. As Lewis Smith states, to forgive is to set a prisoner free and to realize that that prisoner was you. I think forgiveness is a form of prayer that definitely leads to mental well being as it enhances our faith. Faith is not just faith in God, but faith in ourselves. It is a conviction that we can heal, and this often leads to faith and hope. Spirituality, for me, is another source of preserving our mental well being. A struggle in life for people is often a lack of meaning and purpose. And Viktor Frankl calls this an existential vacuum. Spirituality is better understood as a way of life that helps us connect with and build stronger relationships with ourselves, God, nature, and others. This connection can lead to a feeling of a higher sense of purpose, peace, hope, and meaning. From this further emerges the experience of confidence, self esteem, self control, and inner strength. So, what are some of the spiritual practices that can help maintain our mental well being? We could have things like taking a walk, reading, gardening, craft, praying, yoga, meditation, positive conversations, and even journaling. These are activities that allow us to feel peaceful, to feel love, to feel strong, and above all, to feel connected. Another very important source of spirituality is the service of others. Because when we are opening ourselves to be there for another person, we enhance our meaning and purpose in life, and this helps us experience a connectedness with ourselves and with others. A question I ask my students very often, and I also ask myself, is what gets you out of bed in the morning? Do you get out of bed because you have to, or do you get out of bed because you want to? And I do believe spirituality helps preserve our mental well being by giving us a certain positive zest and vitality for life that gives us a reason and purpose to get out of bed every day. And finally, on the point of resilience, I look at it as the ability to recognize and acknowledge that the only person who can harm me is myself, and the only person who can heal me is myself too. It is the ability to trust ourselves to get up, and in this context, it is connected to hope and faith. I do believe that resilience comes forth as a byproduct of the journey of loving ourselves and being grateful for who we are and what we have. And I would like to end my part of the sharing with a quote, which is simply, even in the midst of life's storms, we all have the capacity to stand at the center of our own peace. And for me, prayer and spirituality helps us connect with the power and peace within, giving us a resilience that enables us to preserve our mental well being. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ana Santos Getzinger. I am originally from Venezuela. I came here at the age of 17 with a scholarship to go to college, so I was very fortunate that the oil money that my country was getting back then allowed me to come here. Um, Eventually, I went back to Venezuela, but my now husband pulled me over here again. So we met in college. We've been married for 22 years. We have two boys. One is now in college, and the youngest is a sophomore. And I ended up becoming a yoga and meditation teacher because, as a corporate um, career and a mom and a wife, I found myself very stressed, very anxious. This was in my early in my marriage and when my kids were young. Also, I tended to be a perfectionist, so I was demanding a lot of myself. And I realized through yoga, so the practice of yoga, which is could also be a spiritual practice, not just a physical practice, allowed me to realize that I didn't have to be perfect, that I could find balance in my life through other means and not just always working 100% to be good at everything, but saying, okay, what do I want to prioritize in my life? What are the things that are important? And how can I relieve stress? What are the things that I could do every day to relieve stress so that it's not just panting up at myself? Because that would happen. As a mother of two active children, they would run around. I would lose my temper and snap, which I know that happens to a lot of us. But I was able to catch myself and just say, okay, why did I react this way? why am I acting like this? What's triggering these feelings? So I also suffered from anxiety early on, and so mental therapy or counseling, yoga, and Pilates, and now the work that I do helping others is basically help me just understand that there are ways to connect with God, become spiritual, become balanced without having to deal with all that pressure that we put on ourselves, and trusting that God will have a path for us. So really just finding that path and finding that the Holy Spirit, the way that we can become the best version of ourselves. So basically, I quit my corporate career, became what I am today, which is really become a great job, very fulfilled with what I do, and really helping others finding the tools to take care of themselves, the tools to become more mindful and more present through yoga and Pilates are some of the exercises that we do, but we also offer meditation classes, Tai Chi classes. So different ways that people can connect within through breathing and just take that time to just be still and be relaxed and not have to deal with the list of 1,000 things that we have to do every day. So when you do a yoga class or when you do an exercise class, you can actually shut that part of your brain and really just say, I am enough and I am beloved and I am grateful for what I have in my life. And then also the exercise, as we all know, allows us to then generate those very positive hormones that will then help us feel better. So even when you're doing some of those classes, some of my instructors, and sometimes I remember to tell people to just smile, because just the simple gesture of smiling will send a signal to your brain that says, I feel good. And you start feeling good just by making that simple gesture. So the way that I would like to address, or what I would like to share with the group today is that, well, I think I jumped ahead a little bit. So yeah, after I had the kids, worked in corporate for a few years, founded the business. Some of you might have seen the business when I had it here on Milwaukee Avenue. It's called Orinoco Fitness. Orinoco is a river in Venezuela, which is where I'm from. And then just more recently, I became a yoga and meditation teacher. That's a 200-hour training that I took. And so like I mentioned, I do enjoy helping others find ways to take care of themselves and love themselves. So some of the tools that I recommend for people are obviously taking time every day to take care of themselves, like taking a walk in nature, exercising, reading a book, some similar things that Heather was mentioning earlier. Becoming more mindful, becoming more aware of what are some of those negative thoughts that are triggering you to feel anxious or to feel fearful or to feel sad. Trying to identify those thoughts and then just writing in a journal and maybe just saying to God, okay, I'm feeling this way. I want to feel better. So just writing it down in a journal would be helpful, and prayer, obviously. Um, Taking time to sleep, taking time to rest, engaging in fun activities. So a lot of times we're like, I'm busy, I have to work, I have all these responsibilities, but then we start feeling burned out. And if we don't take the time to self-care, to take that break, we're not going to function as well. And I know you've probably heard this 1,000 times from different people, but it's taking those 15 minutes out of your day to just breathe or just close your eyes and maybe put some soothing music and just take that pause and take that break. And learning to meditate is hard. So it's one of those things that if you do it every day, then you learn to quiet your mind. If you don't do it, then when you take the time to, okay, I'm going to take that break, I don't know how to do it. My mind is just going 1,000 miles an hour. It's one of those things with practice, it becomes part of you, it becomes easier. Another tool that I like using is positive affirmations. So it's basically what a lot of us have heard is the power of attraction. So want to attract something to our lives, we declare it as truth in the present tense. So we say, I am enough, or I am important, I am loved, I am God's beloved son or daughter. So just declaring those truths and declaring those things that we want to attract. I am perfect health if we're dealing with health issues, or I am peace if we're dealing with that anxiety that is keeping us from feeling peaceful. And lastly, so maintaining a journal with those affirmations is important. It's something that I do often. And starting your day with gratitude. So when you wake up in the morning, just thinking about the things that you're grateful for and thinking about the things that you have as opposed to what you don't have. Because the more that you repeat it in your mind, the more you're going to attract it. So just really just focusing on the positive and saying in the present the things that you do want in your life. Keeping connections, spending time with family and friends. One thing that might be difficult to do, but is eliminating toxic people from your life. So sometimes we just get caught in this drama and this negativity, and we're like, what is happening? I was in a good place, I was happy, why am I upset? Okay, I got a text from this person, or I got a call from this person, or I saw this something on TV that was very negative, and it's just put me in a bad place again. So being mindful about, okay, what are those relationships in my life that are bringing that negativity? Do I really need this person in my life? Maybe I don't. So maybe you stop spending time with that person. And then if it's a relative, it's someone that you live with or someone close to you, just realizing I can't change that person. I can't change how they behave, but I am going to try to change how I react to how they behave. So there are some resources, some books. So later on, if you would like to talk to me or look at some of the resources I have out there, just ways to help with the negativity and eliminating it from your life. And lastly, just incorporating all these self-care and self-love tools will allow you to become more peaceful, just finding that long-lasting peace regardless of circumstances. So obviously the world is very complex, and obviously there are many problems, but if you learn to just enjoy the present moment and not be stuck in the past or worried about the future, and just say, what I have here is here and now, and I'm breathing, and these are the things I'm grateful for, you could find that joy, and eventually it will help you just find that inner peace. And trusting God and praying. I'm a Catholic, I'm a devoted Catholic, and just trusting that the Holy Spirit will guide you in those problems. So I just wanted to clarify, even though I'm a yoga teacher, I have incorporated the spiritual teachings from yoga, but I continue to maintain my faith. So if people have questions about that, a lot of people think that yoga is a religion, which is not. It's a physical discipline that incorporates some really beautiful spiritual teachings or pieces, but it's mostly moving your body and breathing. So by moving your body, you're going to take care of a lot of the tension and the stress. By breathing, you're going to help calm your mind, which will then release a lot of positive, good hormones. You could start sleeping better too. We have inversion, which is bringing your head below your heart, which it forces blood to your brain, which also helps clear your mind. So there is a lot of scientific proof that the movements and the sequences that you do in a yoga class could really be beneficial for your physical health, for your emotional and mental health. So I just want to encourage people, if you're afraid of doing yoga, just move more. Just take more walks, dance, do Tai Chi, do other activities that are in your community, and just the movement of your body will help you just have a better outlook. And then also just being out in nature will help you clear your mind. And the connection, don't get isolated. Try to find a community of people that can do that one activity with you, and that will help with whatever you're dealing with. Sorry, I think I went a little over. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Is that working? Okay. My name is Karen Peterson, as you heard. I am a clinical social worker here in Libertyville at Youth and Family Counseling. And I've been with them not quite a year and a half. I'm so happy to be working in the community where I grew up. I did go to Adler and Butterfield and LHS, and I have 3 kids who've gone through all those same schools as well. I have 2 juniors at Libertyville High School, and I have a daughter who's a freshman at Augustana. So a little bit about me in terms of background and what's brought me to working in mental health is I did spend almost 27 years working at the Cradle in Evanston, and that is an adoption agency supporting folks experiencing unintended pregnancy and also working with couples seeking adoption. And it was a wonderful experience, very difficult, of course. I would say that kind of social work is bittersweet, but I was a part of, gosh, over 100 adoptions, and I worked with many, many birth parents. And both sets of clients really struggle with a lot of grief. And grief work is something that I think we all, experience differently. And especially when I was working with birth parents who were generally younger, not always, how that intersected with mental health was something that we were aware of, whether it was depression, anxiety, it might have been substance use issues, but in addition to the presenting problem, there was always, an assessment of mental health. So as my time, many, many years came to what I thought was the right kind of time to wrap up, and I was looking for what to do next, I knew I was interested in working in the mental health field. So very excited to have found my way to Youth and Family Counseling, where I've been the clinical director for the last 17 months, and I am excited and grateful to our executive director that we really saw how we're all here today, that the community is hungry for more information, more support, more education. As parents, as providers, I do a lot of speaking with providers, so social workers and counselors, as well as with community members and families and parents. I've really shifted my role, and so now I'm the director of community engagement, which really reflects that we want to be available to the community, not just with our internal facing counseling services, which Youth and Family has been in Libertyville. We're in our 61st year, so been around for a very long time, supporting many, many families over all those years, but also to be a resource externally to the community. So I'm very happy to be here. I have some thoughts and remarks, but I think that I'll just pass it here to Mike, and then we can maybe respond to some questions.
Good evening. My name is Mike Fitzgibbons. Well, I've been doing this work. Well, why don't I just start? I was at Carmel High School as a campus minister for 44 years, and I retired in 2020 from there when they found out that I was really still there, and they kicked me out. I'm kidding. Really, what brings me here tonight, I have a wife, 3 kids that are grown, and a couple grandchildren. But what brings me here, what really, feeds the beast, as it were, with me, what really got me into this to begin with, I was at Carmel for 6 years or so, and I remember it very well. I can tell you when it was. It was March 11th, 1982. I was on my way to pick up my then girlfriend. I was at the corner of 103rd and Kedzie on the south side at a red light. And I felt like somebody rolled down the window from the outside and popped me one in the side of the head. And from the tip of my forehead to from the bottom of my feet, terror went up my body and down my body and met in my stomach. I don't mean fear, I mean terror. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what it was. I was at a red light. And then I gasped. I felt a cold sweat. I looked at my open coat and my shirt, and I saw my heart beating. I'd never seen that before. And it scared me more. And then the terror continued, and I couldn't swallow. And that did it. The light changed. And I know that going 70 miles an hour down 103rd Street is not a good idea in Chicago, having been born and raised down there. But that's what I was doing because that's where I was going. And that night and that first panic attack led to thousands of panic attacks. Thousands. And in 1982 in Chicago, no one knew what they were. And so I went to 20 different types of professionals, most of whom really cared. But I was given every kind of treatment you can imagine, including pills the size of dog biscuits. I swear to you, they were this big. And am I supposed to swallow that? It was horrific. And then one day in the spring of 1987, 5 years later, I went into a psychologist's office in Highland Park, and he asked me to tell him, why was I here? Why are you here today, Mike? And I had my leg crossed like this, and I started to tell my story, and he reached across from his desk and grabbed my foot and said, hold it, hold it, hold it, after 20 minutes. He said, these are panic attacks. You're having panic attacks. And I said, what's that? He said, okay, this is bad for you that you're living this, but you're okay. You're fine. Until that moment, for 5 years, I off and on thought I had lost it. I ceased having any serious relationships, etc. And there was this really nice girl teaching Spanish at Carmel. I wanted to ask on a date, and I didn't do it. And now we've been married 35 years, so it was really good that he said that. And he said, they're panic attacks. You don't know what they are? I said, no. And then he said, for 5 years? And then I started crying and didn't stop for the whole rest of the session. And really that led me to being here tonight. At the time, the following year, that was actually at the end of my first year as head football coach. Could you imagine that I became head football coach in the middle of all that? But I did. And I started working in the early 90s toward a master's degree with help from that guy in Highland Park to get a master's degree and learn to be a therapist, because I could help people who were having similar problems. The thing is, no one knew where to go then. And yes, it's exploded, yes. But I'm telling you, when I first found out where the panic attacks were, they estimated, ready for this, that 2 million people in America had panic attacks and 8 million had anxiety issues. It's over 50 million Americans have anxiety, measurable anxiety issues right now, and that might be low right now. I mean, Bridget mentioned with the teenagers. I'm not only talking about teenagers. Can you imagine? 1982 to 1987, it was between 2 and 8 million. It's over 50 million. But at least there's places to go. And I was just listening to these three wonderful people, and I'm like, yeah. And I was thinking, comparing about what I went through, and I'm not complaining, but thank goodness we have things people know. Oh, I recognize that. I know what that is. I know what that is. And, you know, like I get calls all the time about, hey, do you know what this is, right? You know what this is, right? Other counselors, people didn't even talk about it. And if I had, by the way, had a panic attack in Boston, New York, LA, or San Francisco in 1982, every one of the mental health experts would have said, that's a panic attack. They didn't know. It took years for things to get to the middle of the country. I'm not kidding. I was told that, and it's the truth. But anyway, so my messages are pretty simple. those are beautiful messages, all of them. But, you know, the things that I have experienced that are really important is, I like, Father, what you said about 80% of negative thoughts. I can't. If I hear, my clients know they can't say that anymore. You know, those are dirty words in my office. You don't get to say I can't. We start with that, and then we use words like always and never, and they don't fit anyway, and they feed the beast of the the negative self-talk that's going on 100 miles an hour in your head, which you can stop. You know, with yoga and meditation, things like that. You know, you can't stop it. There are tools now. People didn't know those in their 80s, but they're there, and there are a lot of people know how to do it. So there's places you can go, and the words "I can't" need to leave the vocabulary, because yes, you can. You certainly can. Everybody can, and you can get healthy. You can. So, you know that. The other thing is that a lot of people think this is counterproductive, counterintuitive, even counter-Christian. The pyramid of care, it's called a pyramid on purpose. It starts at the very, very top with loving yourself first. And people say, you can't love yourself first. You got to love your kids. You got to love your wife. You're not going to be the best role. You're not going to be able to do the best at loving your kids or your spouse unless you love yourself first. You got to take care of you. Then you take care of the next. And usually with married folks, it's number two is the marriage. So guess what? The kids are third. And no one likes to hear that, but that's the healthiest way to do it, because then you could be the best parent in history. But nobody wants to do that, and nobody wants to hear that. But then they listen to it and go, well, wait, that kind of makes sense, because it does make sense. And, you know, I spent a lot of time with the pyramid of care in my office and how it flips during your life. I became less of a son and brother and more of a husband and father. You know, you go, it just flips at some point. So, you know, that, and the other thing that was mentioned already, but I spent a lot of time on with people in my office, is the whole challenge of staying in the moment. I love the percentages that people have about that, but, you know, it doesn't surprise me, 5%. Staying in the moment. There's so much, you know, I tell people you have to cut the cord to the past, because your psyche's always going to remember something, and as soon as it has that feeling, oh, we remember this, and then you're going to tie it, and then people are responding, I liken it to this. They'll get mad at their mom, and as soon as they get mad at their mom, they'll remember being mad at their mom 10 other times, and instead of answering with the garden hose of anger, they take the fire hose out, and mom doesn't know why they're screaming and yelling. Like it was just a little argument. Well, that's why they're screaming and yelling, because they're going past instead of living in the moment. The moment is the key. If we all live in the now, that's what makes it work. At least it seems to me. Those were the simple things, and I didn't go overtime, but that's it.
Thank you. Thank you each for introducing yourselves and sharing a little bit. I do want to encourage you that if any of you do have questions that you would like us to address tonight, to please put them on the note cards, and Anna or Mary would be happy to come around to collect those from you. While people are thinking of any questions that they have, I am just going to ask some general questions to start with, and then anyone on the panel who would like to address them, please do so. So Mike, you had mentioned there at the end that we need to be like number one right now as far as our care. When we're feeling so overwhelmed with everything that's happening, what are some strategies for caring for ourselves? How do we take care of ourselves first? Is there anybody who'd like to?
That is the million-dollar question. It really comes to prioritizing your time and making that decision that you are important, that you have to take that time to fill your fill your tank with fuel to be able to function and care for your family, do well in your job, be the best friend that you need to be to your friend who's now dealing with an illness, or be the best daughter who is now caring for an aging parent. So it sounds very difficult, and it could be, but taking that time, if you're not a morning person like me, if you can't get up at 5 to do a yoga class and meditate, do it before you go to bed. So sort of setting yourself up to succeed the next day. So taking that time at night to take a long bath, really unwind, get off your phone, write in your journal, listening to some soothing music. There are some beautiful meditations out there. There are some in my channel, so if you want to look up some of the ones I have in my YouTube channel. But if you can calm the chatter in your mind, then find those guided meditations and do those things that help you relax and unwind and rest and feel like I matter, so I'm taking this time for me. So if you do it the night before, taking that time for you, and then just making a plan for the next day. Okay, so tomorrow I'm going to be the best version of myself, and then I'm going to be able to take care of myself just as I take care of others. And you're going to start seeing the difference. You're going to start seeing how you're just more engaged, more present. But it doesn't just take, it's not just one thing that you do. I think is really the mindfulness work of, okay, what are the things in my life that are not working, and then taking the time to say, I'm going to prioritize. Okay, I've been suffering for anxiety for years. I'm going to go see that therapist. Or my marriage has been struggling for years. We're going to go see that marriage counselor. Or I've been wanting to take this dance class for years, but I'm always driving my kids. I'm going to ask for help so someone else can drive my kids, or someone else can do this, so I can take this time for me. So asking others for help, that was huge for me as a mom. So I don't have my family close by, but I've had the support of my husband's family here, and they have been so supportive. So anytime that we would need help, they would be my go-to people. But there were times when they couldn't do it. So I was like, oh, okay, so I guess I can go do this, or my husband's working, how do I do this? I started hiring people. I was running the studio. I'm like, okay, I want to go see my son play, and then I want to go do this other activity that for me. So I have someone else be at the front desk. I don't have to be at the front desk. Someone else is teaching the class. I can be somewhere else. So it's really delegating and asking for that help. Trying to be perfect and Superman or Superwoman, it's impossible. It's a lie. It's the biggest lie. I know I'm all for women being empowered, that they can do everything they want to do, but women have to learn to be smart and ask for help, because if you try to do everything, you're just going to burn out. So taking that care, taking that time to replenish yourself will be something that will pay off in the long run. So how do you make that fit in your schedule? You drop stuff. You can't do it all. So okay, so do I have to clean that bathroom right now, or do I go take that nap? Seriously, it's true. It's true. So honestly, it's like, what are the things that are important in my life? And okay, too bad somebody came and saw the bathroom being dirty, but who cares? Okay, so it's prioritizing those things, I think, that matter.
Just to play on what is already said, I think for me, I believe in a concept known as positive selfishness. We need to take that break, because a point that has not come out very strongly, but another thing that people experience in life is a burnout. And if you're not careful to really see what you enjoy doing and to keep yourself at that level, everybody around you becomes a victim to that burnout too. And I think that's the concern. So you need to be selfish at times, but you're doing this for a good cause. You're not doing it because, just for myself. It's so that I can be better for others. And I think that's where positiveness and giving yourself that me time is so important.
And one of the first things, it doesn't matter what the presenting difficulty when I meet a client. I ask the same questions. and they have to do with, okay, how often do you exercise? You know, no, well, I'm not, I walk the dog. Well, do you stop when you're walking the dog? I said, is there continuous, is your heart rate go up 20 minutes, a day, 3 or 4 times a week at your age, or 4 or 5 times a week? That's all? Do you do that? No. Okay, that's one. How's your diet? Are you eating healthy? And tell me about your sleep habits. Those 3 things, I just asked those 3 things, and we're already, and then some of those things come up. So it seems to me there's a lot of us that don't, it just, you say it's all over the place, that the problems are how do we handle all this? Well, we take care of ourselves with just simple things like that. Like you start to, I like that positive selfishness. I'm stealing that, Jesuit man. I like it.
I was just, I was going to add one thing to that. As you were talking, I find myself often saying that we need to take the advice we give the most, or the advice we give the most, we also need to take, because in the healing professions, we are giving and giving and giving, and part of what we do is we help people set limits and have boundaries and put themselves first, and stop and find balance and work on strategies and coping, and we look at sleep and we talk about nutrition. We do all those things for our clients, and as parents we do those for our kids, and I'm here to remind us we need to do that for our kids sometimes. If they're swinging one way or another, first we might wonder, how's their blood sugar, when was the last time they ate. Teenagers are so impacted and things swing pretty far. So for all of those things that we try and help others with, I concur, we have to take care of ourselves. And for anyone who is also in the helping, healing vocations and professions, I think you know what I'm talking about.
Okay, so the next question that I wanted to ask is, so we talked about, taking care of ourselves and our own mental health. How can we tell if our children, and these can be adult children, these could be teens, these could be, younger. How can we tell if our child is struggling with their mental health, or if their behavior is just a part of normal getting older, maybe entering those teen years, hormone imbalances, things like that? How do we know?
Sure. Well, first of all, another dirty word in my office is the word normal. I always tell my clients that normal is a cycle in a dryer. There. Never say that again in here. I don't even know what normal is, but I think that anything that's I think parents have an inner, at least my wife did. I'm not sure I did, but they have an inner. They just know when something's amiss with one of the kids. And my children now are 31, 29, and 28, and my wife still knows when something's amiss with one of the kids. And so, it's just that inner that we know something's off. And we have to learn, again, if you're loving yourself, then you're going to trust yourself. We have to trust ourselves. Wait, I'm right. The kid's saying nothing's wrong. I'm right. And then you start to notice. And you were mentioning journaling. Gosh, that's such a great idea to journal anyway. Well, if you're journaling constantly and you're writing something down every day, you just have to look for the last couple of, wait, how did he act last week? Because I'm writing about this. And by the way, folks, I say this in my office too a lot. Journaling is reflecting, and reflection is what separates us from the animal world. We get to do it, no one else does. So it's just so smart and healthy to do that. So really, if you're raising kids, you're writing about them, you're going to be able to tell a difference. Even though they'll say there's not, you'll be able to tell. And that's the other part of loving yourself, is trusting yourself. I think that's what I meant to answer. I meant to not take 3 minutes with that. Sorry.
You know what, I'd like to say just a few words about that, because as I just referenced, we know that teens, it's normal for them to have some big swings, but there are things that we can look for with anxiety. If your kids, or it could be an adult, as we're saying, have had that heightened anxiety for persistently for about 6 months, that starts to meet the threshold of anxiety. But with kids, it can be a shorter amount of time if it becomes acute. And when we're talking about depression, it's just 2 weeks if they are showing consistent signs of depression consistently daily for about 2 weeks. That certainly is hitting a threshold where that's not a mood swing and being overtired. They really might be starting to become depressed. And there are ways that we can see it. I mean, they don't always articulate and say, now, my daughter gave me permission to talk a little bit about her tonight, and she does walk into a room and say things like, I'm sad. Well, that's helpful. It really is. It's her way of saying, I need something. Can we talk? But most kids don't do that, so we're trying to interpret behavior. Are they spending more time in their room? Are they having more trouble focusing, paying attention? How are their grades going? You know, part of the reason why grades start to fall when kids are struggling, and with depression in particular, is that depression kills motivation. It impacts our ability to focus and concentrate, and it really impacts our ability to care. Kids will say, I don't care about it. And it's like, well, you have this test, and as a parent, you're thinking, well, you used to study really hard for that honors history or whatever, and now you haven't read the pages, you haven't taken notes, and they'll just say, I just don't care. That is depression talking to you. And part of talking to your kids about that is that I work with one therapist who almost makes it its own being and says, that's the depression talking right now. Not to invalidate the experience and the feeling, but to know that, as Mike was saying, depression and anxiety are treatable. There are ways we can help young people with this. Sometimes depressed kids will think that their level of depression is their new baseline. Like, this is just how it is. And they'll be real negative. Like, this is just it. And not really recognize that, you know, we as parents can have some perspective on 12 months ago, was this their baseline? Or do we notice that it's really changed? So we are looking and listening for things like that, including some of the things that have already been mentioned, like change in sleep habits, change in appetite, weight loss, maybe weight gain, more time on the screens if that's possible. That's a whole conversation. You know, I really liked what the father was talking about with connection. And we know one of the things that helps build resiliency with all of us, but thinking about kids and teens, is feeling connection to their family, connection to their parents, connection to, let's hope, a healthy friend. You know, sometimes it's a teacher, sometimes it's a school counselor, it might be a therapist, but that utter isolation that kids can perceive is not, it's like not accurate perception. They're perceiving through that lens of a mental health struggle. So sometimes we have to kind of put up a mirror gently and talk about what we're seeing that might be different from what they're seeing. You know, so I mean, we could talk a lot about trying to open up connection or communication. Sometimes we're afraid to talk to kids about their mood, not sure what they're going to say, or not feeling like we're going to have the right words. But I really encourage you, if you're worried about your kids, to just start the conversation. It's pretty amazing what they will start to open up about.
That's interesting that you said that last part. I have a 16-year-old son, and the other night I could just see him, and something was off, and I was like, what's wrong? Nothing. What's wrong? Nothing. What's wrong? Nothing. What's wrong? Finally, when he knew I wasn't going to give up, he's finally like, well, and then it comes out. And it's just like that, opening the dialogue, and it's not always easy. I know we talked the other day that, you know, some of us are lucky enough to have kids who are very open and in touch with their feelings, and some just really struggle to have those conversations. And so it's just like you said, just that constant trying to keep it open. How do we keep those lines of communication open, though, when that doors always closed. You know, like think, some of us who have teens, that bedroom door is always closed. They're never home. They're with with their friends on their phone. How do we do that?
Oh gosh, this is something we see and hear a lot. I did send an email out to some of the therapists today, letting them know they knew I was going to be here this evening, and just said, what do you wish parents, what would you like parents to know? What would your teen clients like parents to know and hear about? And interesting responses. One that I heard from many therapists was keep talking to them. Um, we know that it's normal for teens to want some privacy, right? So it might even be some negotiating about how often, how long is the door closed, or the parents can go in. I knock and have my hand on the doorknob, and I kind of move in pretty quickly, but I knock and let them know I'm coming in. So because they don't get to make all the rules, they don't get to say, I'm not coming out, I'm not coming to dinner, I'm not doing family time ever. But we can compromise with them and think about that they do need their friend time, which often is in their room on a screen, right? You can hear them laughing or talking, and they're talking to their friends. But that family dinner, maybe that's going to be the time where we are going to be out of our rooms. We're all going to be together. Sometimes when I'm working late at night, I'll make sure I get up early so that I can have breakfast with them. And instead of their usual bowl of cereal, maybe we're going to have, eggs and bacon, just to have that connection before I'm going to be gone for the day. Because we can't totally control. They are away from us more, and they're in their room and the door is shut. And depending on the age of your child, if they're younger, you can also look at their devices. I think a lot of times we hear from parents who are afraid to ask for the password. Now my boys are turning 17, and I haven't asked to look at their phone probably in about a year, but I did up until about that time, and I do walk in and look at all the windows with them. I sit with them and say, what windows are open tonight? Oh my gosh, Mom. Well, just I want to know what games you're playing these days. So, be curious. That's one of those phrases we say a lot in therapy and a lot in parenting advice is for us to be curious. You maybe don't care about that video game that much, but I really act interested, and then they'll want to tell you if they're saying nothing, 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 and then they tell you about something that was exciting for them, or maybe they lost a game badly, but you acted interested, and now they're talking to you, and now the dialogue is starting. Yeah.
Advice. Here's another question. How do you help young adults distinguish between anxiety and the stress that is just a part of life?
Well, they say, the mental health folks, they put anxiety into four sequences: mild, moderate, severe, and panic. And so, there's not anyone who's getting out of it without mild anxiety. So I don't know that distinguishing between, if they want to know if it's anxiety, yes, it's anxiety. That's what it is. When it gets to the moderate level, it just doesn't leave their mind. They're still able to do the everyday activities, but the worrying is, the other things that happen, the sweating or whatever, they don't go away and as quickly. And then if it begins to impact the daily activities, now you got severe. But so somewhere in there, so how do you distinguish between that mild, that anxiety and just normal everyday? You don't. Mild anxiety is part of living, and so that's just part of it. I think everybody. It'd be silly to think that there's anybody out there that doesn't go through that. No.
I'm going to add to that and share with you, my daughter did struggle with anxiety when she was a freshman, and she had her first panic attack at a school dance with homecoming, so at the very beginning of high school. So that was pretty stressful stuff. I didn't realize how stressful. But she got some great counseling on that. And one of the things her therapist talked with her about anxiety, is that a lower level of anxiety is actually functional, right? It motivates us, not at the clinical level, but if you have a test and you're nervous, or you have a couple AP classes and you're nervous and the papers due the same day, now you're feeling pretty anxious. And if you're handling your anxiety fairly well, you've got some things pretty well intact, you're going to be uncomfortable, but you're going to be very motivated. And that week, you maybe are going to structure your time a little differently. You know that all those things are coming up. You can't wait for those tests to be behind you. But that little bit of anxiety is part of what's motivating for us, until or unless it gets to, a more elevated level. But just wanted to make that comment.
My 2 cents here is, um, I think, well, this could be another term clinically, but when you can be in the present moment, when your mind just wants to go to the past, I did this, and you're blaming yourself, and I should have done this better, and I should have talked to this person, or why did this person say blah blah blah, and you're stuck in that, or I have to do this tomorrow, and I have so many things happening, like you just feel that overwhelming just thoughts and feelings, and you're having dinner with your family, or you're watching your son's soccer game, and you're not there really, because your mind is taking you somewhere else, the monkey mind, we call it. So to me, anxiety is when that mind, when you can't shut it off, and you cannot enjoy the present moment because of the worry, and because you're anxious, because you don't have peace of mind that I'm going to put it on a list and I'm going to take care of it tomorrow. That doesn't do it. So that's when you really need that help. You need the help of a specialist, of a counselor, of a therapist, to help you with strategies to then how to move from that to a peaceful present state of mind.
Thank you. That's great. Here's a question. It's kind of a few prongs. So I'm going to start with the first one of, how can I support someone who is stressed, depressed, and hopeless? How do we support them?
Well, I think that, you know, what's the level of that, would be the question. How often is it constant, continuous? I mean, that sounds like a person, if it's pretty continuous, like we just heard, 2 weeks of that is more than enough for a young person, and that's when they need help. So how do you support that? You get that person help, or you help that person get help,
So the next part of that question then, you help me lead right into it. How do you encourage a young adult to seek mental health services?
Well, I can, excuse me, I can jump in a little bit. First, just realizing that we can't make people take this advice or this encouragement, but what we can do is share with them and reflect the reasons we're concerned, right? What we're observing, that we've noticed a change in them. We know that people want to feel better, even when they're in a place of depression where they their motivation is so low. They do want to feel better. And I think that it can be difficult to think about, what does it mean if I need counseling? What does it mean if I need a therapist? I was looking at some statistics. Adolescent boys go to therapy about at half the rate of adolescent girls. And I sure think that's because there's a part of boys that think there's something about that. They don't want anyone to know if they're getting some counseling, or it's difficult to encourage them. We still need to try and encourage them if they have some mental health issues going on, but I think that's interesting. So sharing with people that you're concerned, why you're concerned, maybe providing actual resources, phone numbers, a referral, offering to go with someone if it's hard, or offering to sit with them while they make a phone call. A personal referral sometimes makes it a little easier for someone to think about because it can be overwhelming to try and find a therapist. And part of the search to find a therapist might be asking people for a referral. Well, but then you're kind of exposing yourself, and that might feel scary. And so people kind of get stuck in, I don't know how to find someone. I don't know if you have thoughts about that, but sometimes that's the barrier to getting started with treatment, is that people aren't sure where to turn.
Well, a couple things. First of all, my experience with young folks is that and yes, I know that half boys, and that's the adolescent part of the field, but young adults in today's world are much more willing to get help than my crowd was, or even right below me. Way more willing. Like, hey, do you know a therapist? Or hey, I I see that. That's for sure. Um, I think as far as down into the adolescent world, it's still that whole thing with boys is that they still are. Oh, I can't let anyone know I'm crazy, because that's the way they think of it. But the other thing is if they know, if you know someone that they respect that has seen a therapist, to ask them to reach out to them. That I know works. I use that all the time. That works. So I don't know.
And I know that we spoke the other day, and you were telling me that in many cases it can be a 9-month waiting list to be able to get in to get, in to see a therapist or something. What do we do with that kind of?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking that. And I'm glad to say it's not a 9-month waiting list where I'm working, but it is in many places. It is at the health department right now. There are some real challenges for folks who are on Medicaid or one of the managed care um, insurances, because less providers are able to accept the medical card that they have. And so part of the push is to try and get more providers to, kind of be registered to be able to see Medicaid clients. At Youth and Family, just 3 weeks ago, we started being able to accept Medicaid clients. So it is a little different when you call a place in terms of being able to be offered an appointment, depending on the availability and flexibility of the request. And if people can be seen through telehealth, if they can be seen during the day, if someone can be seen during their lunch hour, those things do increase the likelihood of being able to be placed into the schedule for a therapy practice. But it is true that many places, I understand right now Catholic Charities has about a 6-month waiting list. The one that I'm familiar with, where I know a social worker. So we know it's a crisis. I mean, a whole other conversation is we don't have enough mental health providers, not just here in Libertyville or Lake County, but it's a crisis in the country right now. I'm actively recruiting for therapists every single day. So that's feeding into the problem of these longer wait lists, unfortunately.
With that information and knowing that, another one of the questions that we got here is, what role can faith communities like St. Joe's play in supporting those who are struggling with mental health? So I see so many of us here tonight, and it's like there's power in numbers. And so how do we support each other in this time?
I think for me personally, just listening to all that has been said, is to develop this ability to have a compassionate curiosity. Because I think that's something very important whenever we are interacting with people at mass or any place, to just know the other. And I think that helps them feel connected. They feel part of a community, which kind of develops a kind of connection that is much deeper. So I think that could be something very helpful when we are making, it's not inquisitive, but you just want to know the other person in order to kind of feel that they also belong. I think belonging is a very important characteristic to try to develop as a faith level community.
One of the resources that St. Joe's has, and I know other Catholic churches have, is for women, and I know there are also for men Bible studies. There is a Walking with Purpose women's Bible study that I started in 2019, and it was a huge turning point in my life because a lot of things were changing in my life, including moving my business from the beautiful location that I had to other locations and virtual, and then dealing with the family loss, losing a brother-in-law back home in Venezuela. So having the support in the church is really important, and I think people like us who are here, if we know about these communities and these Bible studies and these fellowship groups, to spread the word so that others learn more. I know that the Walking with Purpose, it starts with a book called Opening Your Heart, and you can go through the Bible study and then you can keep moving up different books. But if someone wants to start that, the Opening Your Heart, and nobody else can lead it, then if you were part of that Bible study, maybe you can volunteer to be that leader. So if anyone is interested in starting that Bible study, I'll be willing to help facilitate that because it made a huge impact in my life, and I'm continuing with the Bible studies. I'm on my third right now, and it's just a great opportunity to reconnect with the church, with women of your own faith or men. I also know there are some resources here. So really utilizing the parish and the services and what's going on here, the community, so that you feel connected and you don't feel, okay, I have this problem, I'm all alone. How do I do this? Even just coming to these type of discussions and Bible studies and groups can give you some support and some help and shine some light.
Thank you. I agree. There's so many great things that are happening at St. Joe's. I think sometimes it's taking that first step to get involved. And once you do, like you said with the Bible study, what a difference it made in your life. It's just opening yourself up to that. Something else that's been addressed here, and I know that we all hear this, how can we address the stigma surrounding mental health? You brought it up earlier. Well, maybe we don't want to ask too many questions because then people know that we've got a problem or whatever. How do we put that aside, and how do we get to, the real problem?
Well, my first thought in that question is how we normalize that in ourselves. One of the things we know to help kids with identifying if they are struggling with anxiety or depression is to relate to a time that you might have felt that way. To really listen to your children, validate their feelings. And I'm not talking about making up fiction if you never felt that way, but if we have felt that way, to share that. I think showing that vulnerability as adults, as parents, that really does help teens. They have a certain picture of us, and maybe depending on their mood, it might be a moody picture of us, but it maybe doesn't. They maybe don't have the full picture, because we don't always show all of our past or all of ourselves to our kids. But if we can model that, I think that helps. At least take some steps towards counseling. The other thing I would say about stigma, and I wonder if some parents in the room might agree with this, is that I think through COVID and those really tough years, at one point, my sister and my niece had 2 or 3 best friends, and I think 4 out of 5 were seeing a therapist. And a couple of them were on medication, and they shared with one another. They talked about, well, I have to get off the line, I'm going to therapy, and they go do virtual therapy, and they pop back on an hour later. I think that normalizing of, we've seen such a change in this generation to feel less stigma and regard that, really shifting how they regard getting mental health care as something we do for ourselves, the way we bring medical care to ourselves. So I think that helps. I think we're seeing that change in the generation. I don't know if other people would agree with that.
I think just emphasizing that is your mind, and if your mind, it's like when you go to the doctor because or the dentist because your tooth hurts, you would take care of it, right? So if your mind it's not working properly, or if you're feeling that your mind can't function, it really is a combination of mind and emotions, but really just emphasizing, okay, isn't your mind the most important thing in your life? So why would your mind have to, just take it without having a relief or a way to heal.
And kind of along those same lines here's another question that we have. How can we empower our teens or young adults to take an active role in their own mental health and well-being?
Well, I think I'm going to kind of go back to my remarks about if a friend or a family member sees someone that they think is struggling, to check in with that person and encourage and advocate for them. A young adult, we can't make that phone call for someone else, but we can, walk alongside them with support until they're ready. Yeah, I would just be encouraging.
Okay, another question that we've actually gotten a few times is what happens when I tried to get help but my mental health is still struggling and it's not enough or it's just not working? What do they do at that point?
Well, I've had my office itself is in its 24th year, and there's 3 people that I've seen for 20, 19, and 18 years. And they kid me relentlessly. Well, I picked the wrong counselor. I'm never getting better. But they do too. But the point is that you keep trying. You keep doing it. And I think that's what I didn't, because Dr. Bill Levin told me I was having panic attacks that day. I didn't stop having panic attacks that day. I just knew what they were, which was a major relief to me, but that didn't stop them. There was no cure. There's no cure for panic disorder. It goes away, it comes back. It goes away, it comes back. No one knows any cure for any of these things. So I just keep using the tools that I know and working the tools. So you keep working it and you found support in places, go to the support. You found things that worked, I have a client who says, who uses this line all the time. I just went into the toolbox and took out that, and it worked. So.
I wanted to add one thing to that, and I love the toolbox. We do try and give more tools to our clients. But I also wanted to talk about medication. And medication, when someone is struggling with anxiety or depression, it is a personal decision that a client would make with their doctor. Their therapist might have a recommendation, might be able to refer them to a psychiatrist, or sometimes with a child it might be to the pediatrician. So with information releases and coordinating care, medication is an option that for many people helps in conjunction with therapy. The research really shows that medication alone.
We put on the tables some surveys. In addition to that, there's like a QR code if you don't have time to fill them out tonight. If you want to do it online, that's an option too. Please put down on these forms, we would love to hear your ideas. Where do we go from here? What are our next steps? What can we as St. Joe's, as a community, do to support you, to keep this conversation going? As I said, we're so grateful that all of you were able to come out and be a part of this. And I'd like to turn it over to Father now. He's going to close us in prayer. But thank you again for being here.
Well, I've modified a prayer by Lorraine Leist, and we just allow the silence to penetrate our being. Loving God, each day we live on the threshold of above and below, of inside and out. We live in spaces in between knowing and never knowing, between believing and questioning, between clarity and ambiguity. These spaces create confusion in us. Back and forth we wander along a winding road, that begins to feel like a maze with no center, no exit, no way out. Too often we live in stuck places like these. It feels as if there is no space for us to rest except within the vast universe of your love. In you, the feeling that no one accompanies us into the darkness diminishes. Instead, complete darkness is replaced when the ray of hope is found in the light that shines through reminding us that when we fall to the ground, you will sit with us there. And when we feel able to stand up, you will steady us and walk with us. In all times, you will be with us. For this, we are ever grateful. Thank you for the clarity of knowing and for the answers continuously given. Through them, we are assured of your presence. Bless all of us who have gathered here with your healing love and grace, and may we go forth with a zeal and zest to experience mental well-being. Amen.
Thank you, Father. And again, thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you to our panelists for agreeing to be a part of this night. We all hope you have a great evening. Thank you.